So in this final session now, we're going to be speaking to Marie Gilty, who is an IT Careers Officer at TU Dublin Tallaght. And Marie's going to talk to us today about creating a winning CV and how to stand out from the crowd. How are you, Marie?
Great, thanks, Piers. All good. So unfortunately, as you say, the graveyard slot, but hopefully good advice to follow. So looking forward to it.
Save the best to last. That's what we usually do.
Hey.
So just before we kick off, as always, I think as you all know by now, you can ask questions by using the chat box to the right, and you can upvote any questions you want to see asked. And time permitting at the end, we'll put as many to Marie as we can. There'll also be a poll associated, which as well, and you can see that to the chat box. So right, just enough for me. I'll hand you over to Marie now, and she'll take you through the session. So off you go, Marie.
Great, thanks a million, Piers. So thanks a million. Good afternoon, folks, and thanks for bearing with me. I know it's the last session, but I think the CV is a topic that will always, hopefully if you're at this session, you'll always glean something that will be of use to you as you move forward, be it for an internship or your graduate opportunity. So just as Piers has said, my name is Marie Gilty, so I'm one of the career coaches in TU Dublin Tallaght. And it's brilliant to be part of this event and just, as we say, to deliver some impactful advice. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. It's a short session, so bear with us. It's not going to take forever. So basically your CV, there's a couple of golden rules with the CV. Do you want to blend in or do you want to stand out? And obviously none of us, no matter what we're at in life, we want to blend in. So if you look at the pictures, if you're a visual learner amongst us and you look at the pictures there, who wants to be those people on the right? We look like we're going to an interview, but we're blending in, we're conforming. Yes, of course, you dress up and you dress appropriately for an interview, but you have to say or do something during that interview that will make you stand out. And that's ultimately the golden nugget today. That's what I'm going to keep coming back to in the next 20 minutes or so. So if you look at all the it's like a mosaic, the bottom right, all the images are blending in together. They're all people, they're all images. There's nothing unique or significant there. So that is the last thing that we want when we go to interview. But the entire purpose of your CV is to make you a winner, to make you stand out, to stand apart. And you want to be like those images on the left. So you want to be that green apple, or you want to be that red pencil that will stand out, stand apart, and will allow you to market and brand yourself. So really today, that starts now. Hopefully you've gone to some of the earlier sessions earlier this afternoon and you've got loads of tips and advice, but really when it comes to working on that CV, it's all about you and how you market and brand yourself. And not all of us, I certainly didn't study marketing in college. Very few of us are specifically marketing graduates, but you have to kind of embrace this technology and this idea that it's about your brand. You are your best brand. You know yourself best. I can't market you. You can market yourself. So that's where you start to think about what are your top skills? What are your top strengths? If you're going to meet an employer today or tomorrow, what can you do for them? Have you thought about it? Have you reflected on it? And you know what, to be honest, we're all guilty of it. We have all of these wonderful attributes, but until you actually are forced to think about it, you don't dwell on it and you don't develop and perhaps maximize yourself to your best. So really, the advice from today is marketing and branding yourself starts with you, and it should start today. Okay, so this looks like a particularly busy slide, and it's probably the meatiest slide in the deck today. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it, and these are some of the golden rules from years and years of experience where I've been reviewing CVs for students for many, many years. There are some basic golden rules that work, and there are some traits and attributes that just clearly don't work on CVs. So if we work from left to right, there are 8 kind of golden rules here we're going to talk about. So top left, simple design and layout. That's your starting point. Avoid tables, avoid use of bullet points, and use a clear font. So keep it simple, don't overcomplicate things. A nice, simple, clear design. Say it once and say it well. Don't tell me the same piece of information twice in a 1 or a 2 page CV. Now, just in terms of length of CV, we're probably talking most people, the majority of people will have on average a 2-page CV. So that's perfectly acceptable. Although that said, in the CV clinic earlier today, I saw some really savvy 1-page CVs. So it can work really, really well if you're brave enough for a 1-page CV. Many people feel that their information may be chopped, so they go for the 2-page CV, and that's absolutely fine. But if it's 2 pages, fill your 2 pages, maximize your time and space. Working left to right, keep it relevant. So everything that is on your CV about you should be there for a reason, and it should be adding value. Okay, so keep everything in your CV relevant to the role you're applying for. And this helps highlight your strengths as well. So, you know, it has to have a context and it's framed for a particular role. There is a rule out there that says, ideally, you should, you know, update or tweak or target your CV for every role you apply for. And that's true, because you will see the generic CV. It will be very apparent, a CV that's just done up and fired off for different jobs. It's not going to be focused, and it's not going to have the keywords, which is the next section we're coming up to. So if you're going for a specific role, let's say it's in HR, or let's say it's in accounting, know the keywords for your sector, know what the buzzwords are, align it to the role, look at the modules that you will have studied previously, put in relevant information. If you've had an opportunity through a part-time job to manage cash, or if you've been involved in sales or customer service, and you're going for an accounting position, be it an internship or a trainee role, pull out those relevant skills, sell yourself. So not alone will you have the academic skills, you will also have some relevant skills from part-time jobs, and that makes you more attractive in the eyes of an employer. Think about the order. So put your CV in reverse chronological order. Now that sounds complicated, and it's not. Basically, start at the present and work back. So if we are currently in 2021, if you're a student in TU Dublin and you're 4th year and you're finishing in 2021, chances are it's been a 4-year level 8 honours degree program. You started in 2017. Put in start and end dates, make it clear. That will be the first piece of information in terms of your 3rd level university experience. Then you will go to previous courses and previous before that. So from the present in reverse order, back. So for every section on your CV, be it your education, your work experience, your hobbies and interests, your additional information, your volunteering experience, the first section or the first piece of information in any section should start with the current level that you're at. So 2021 and earlier. So that really, when an employer is scanning your CV, and you only have 15 or 20 seconds for an employer to scan it to say, yeah, that's in the inbox, or no, that's in the outbox, make sure that it flows consistently, and think about the order and have the order the same for each section. So you're going from the present to the past across each of them, and then it becomes much easier to retain, to read, and for an employer or potential employer to get a picture of you. Keep it updated. We're on box number 5 now. Keep it updated. That is so easy to say, and I'm sure all of us are guilty of that. But from a student's perspective, you should really update your CV at least minimum twice a year. Every time you take a set of exams or a semester and get semester results, you should be updating it. So those of you that took winter exams either before Christmas or just after Christmas in January, you have those results now. You can update, and you should have that updated. And the next time you will update again will be in May, June, when you get your summer results, and you know you have that little bit more information. That's information that will allow you to maximize your brand and to sell yourself with the most up-to-date information. If you're missing opportunities if you don't keep yourself up to date. Always include references in your CV. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that, and you're probably aware of it. You can include the names and addresses and contact details by all means, right? So in your particular case, you may have one academic referee and an employer. If you haven't been working recently because of COVID, or your employment history has been broken because of the impact of COVID, you may then opt to go for 2 academic referees. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Make sure you include the same information for both. So their name their role or position, head of department, lecturer, placement tutor, whatever, the university address, their working address, and then a contact number. So preferably their landline, but with COVID, I'm sure mobiles are acceptable now, and then an email. So you're giving a potential employer 3 or 4 different ways to contact that person. Also perfectly acceptable and equally as acceptable is that line references available on request. So be sure to include one or other, but it's a section that should be included on your CV. If you're tight on space, that line references available on request is perfectly acceptable. 7th box, check your grammar. Now I know I did say I'd spend time on it, and but this is all really relevant, salient information. Check your grammar. And not all of us are English graduates. So if it's a thing, you don't pick up spelling mistakes, or you could be so close to the document, having revised it so many times, that you just don't see a spelling error, or your eye glosses over it. Get somebody else to read it. A spell check on your laptop or your PC won't always pick it up if it's set to an Americanized spelling. So just make sure it's English spelling of the English language, and double check it, triple check it. Ask a friend, ask a family member, ask somebody that you can trust, because inattention to detail is a sackable offence, and that could mean you won't get called to interview. Imagine being on track for a first-class honours and 2 spelling errors on a 2-page CV. It doesn't stack up, and today jobs are difficult to get, they're difficult to hold on to, so you don't want to throw away a golden opportunity by something so careless, that you can have super results, super experience, a super placement opportunity, and rushing the CV, not getting someone to check it, and an error can go in unknown to you, and that could end up becoming a dismissible offence from your perspective. You won't get shortlisted for interview. Every CV today, or the majority of CVs, also have a personal profile. So a little summary, 2-3 line summary at the top of the CV. And again, any of the students I met this morning where I was reviewing their CV, my first question would be, who is this CV aimed at? What is the message? What do you want to convey to an employer? I'm not a mind reader. I don't know where you're targeting yourself. You might have one area, you might have multiple areas. So you need to let me know on your personal profile or your profile summary where you are targeting yourself and what skills you feel will be relevant to the roles you're after. So make your personal profile count. So I would say 3 or 4 really short bullet points: your academic course and an expected result, some personal skills that you've gained as part of that, be it academic writing, your IT skills, your communication skills, your problem solving skills, your analytical skills, a few of those. What are your strongest skills relevant to the sector that you're going into? Some relevant work experience if you have it, so what you've gained, and then some personal attributes: you're resilient, articulate, hardworking, drive, determination. That's a really nice summary. And then you can state what sectors or what areas you're proposing to follow through on. So moving into and reiterating the point where we started, the key sections to include on your CV are outside the heart, but essentially you are the heart of your CV. The CV is about you. And like I said earlier, I cannot write your CV. I can correct it. I can suggest what you should include, but these core sections are included on the outside. Anything in red is an absolute core, and the others are the optional variants. So what I mean is anything in red, everybody includes. So we all have to include personal information. You will include a piece on your education, a piece on work experience, and a piece on your references. Sometimes students leave off hobbies and interests. I would say that is such a wasted opportunity. Be absolutely certain to include that. So things like hobbies and interests make you different. That's an opportunity for you to stand out and stand apart. Your hobbies and interests are probably completely different, or hopefully different to somebody else's. But if you have something unique or novel, that could become a talking point at interview, and that's exactly what you want. You want to be remembered. Your key achievements, again, mark you out and make you unique for you. So that's really important. Think about what are your key skills. And when I suggest that, think about your key skills from 3 different perspectives. Think about your academic skills. What are the skills you've been developing over the last 2, 3, 4 years, or 5 years if you're in postgrad? What are the skills you're developing from part-time jobs, summer jobs, your internship? And you may have 3 or 4 other skills, and there may be overlap, for example, communication or interpersonal skills. And then think about your hobbies and interests and or your volunteering, and think about what skills you've developed there. If you only gleaned 3 skills from each of those 3 areas and 1 or 2 overlaps, you've still 5 or 6 really solid skills. And that's where you can bring fresh information to the interview and give examples from those areas. And that's exactly what you want. I'm conscious of time. I haven't a huge amount more. I'm just going to reiterate what I've said. Add in your unique value. How do you become that red apple? So the red apple has changed from green to red, but how do you stand out? Golden rules. Clarity is key. Say it once and say it well. So if it's there, it's adding value. Just say it once. Spell check. Unforgivable to have spelling errors. Use action verbs. Just try and avoid I managed the football team, I organized such and such a club and society. I becomes quite repetitive. Yes, your CV is about you. Start with the action verb. Managed the basketball club, organized events to fundraise, selected, participated. So think about the action verbs. If it's ongoing, keep it present. If it's over and done with, drop it into the past. Watch acronyms or abbreviations. Use them, but clarify them. So, you may be very familiar with the language surrounding your part-time jobs. Explain it, outline it once, and then revert back to acronyms. Watch your tenses. So as I say, if you're in a part-time job at the minute, keep it present. If it's over and done with, drop it into the past. Make sure there's an overlap between the skills you're talking about and the skills that they're looking for in the job you've applied to. Now, that is not rocket science, but you need to connect one with the other. And that is why when you're applying for jobs, you need to make sure that the jobs you're applying for, you update your CV accordingly. So you may rejig the order. It's not that you're going to drastically change the CV. You're going to focus it for particular roles and highlight certain skills depending on certain roles. So audit your skills. Have a good, long, hard think about your skills and where you've developed them and where you're continuing to develop them. Do research on your sector. Now, these are tasks I would suggest you think about to go forward. And I have some web links coming up, and the slides will be available afterwards through Grad Ireland. Do your research on your sector. What keywords work for your discipline? And remember, we mentioned keywords earlier. Are you on LinkedIn? And are you active on LinkedIn? And you basically are trying to show the connections between the skills you have and what the employer is looking for. And they tell you that on the job spec and on the person spec, and you can do some research yourself on the labour market information and what's happening in the sector. CV, it's all about you. You're now going to become a golden egg. There's some useful resources there. So if you're on LinkedIn and it's okay, but not super, there's some fabulous sources of information there on the suite of university pages aimed from LinkedIn, aimed at university students. Where do you source your labour market information? There's fabulous stuff on Grad Ireland and also on Careers Portal. Know what's out there and know where you can get the information that you want that will be of relevance to you. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to give you a couple of top tips here, what employers are looking for, and I'll finish up in the next 2 to 3 minutes and welcome any questions that you may have. So in terms of what employers are looking for, previous related work experience, absolutely. So any work experience you have is a bonus. If it's related to the sector you're going for, that's a double bonus. Qualifications and skills. So your academic studies, of course, is going to cover that. You want your CV to be easy to read. Is there a flow? Does it flow and follow logically? In terms of accomplishments, have you thought about your achievements? Have you thought about what's important to you? And it does not have to be academic. It could be from the sporting field. It could be from fundraising. It's what's important to you, and that will align with your values and potentially with the values of your potential future employer. Ensure again that the spelling and grammar are are excellent. They're not 90%, they have to be 110%. So as I say, there's lots of resources available on CVs, applications, your personal brand, all of that on the Grad Ireland website. So how do you make your CV stand out? Do your research. Hopefully you don't go into exams without studying and preparing for them. In the same way, if you send off an application with your CV and you haven't prepared, you haven't focused it and tailored it for the role, then you shouldn't be shocked if you don't get the desired result and outcome. You want to create impact. You want to be the person standing out, okay? And you create impact by showing the overlap where you can do the job and you have practical examples to support that. So looking at their skills, looking at what they have identified in their person spec and the job spec, and what skills you have that overlap with that, so that if they take you on, you can do it, and not alone that you can hit the ground running from day one. And that's just about it in terms of the actual detail and how to make yourself stand out and stand apart. And if anybody has any questions, so I'm not too bad, 22 minutes or so, Piers, so not too bad. I'll gladly take any questions.
Yeah, you did really well there, Marie, bang on time, more or less, which is good to see. Yeah, look, we had absolutely tons of questions come in, and that presentation was really good, really clear, salient advice, I think, for students which they can use for their CVs, take away today and start editing them. So I'll try and get through as many of the questions as possible, given the time frame we have. There's one here actually that I've actually never come across before, so we'll put to you, and sorry if it just catches you on the hop now, Marie, but this is a question that says, is it better to leave politics out of a CV? So e.g. if you volunteered for a party?
Yeah, I know where they're coming from, because it can be viewed as controversial, particularly if the other person is from an opposing political or supports an opposing political party. Yeah, I've heard that said before, but I mean, I think too, the bonus is volunteering. So if you step back and look at the bigger picture, I think somebody's volunteering their time, they're caught up in potentially advocating for another forum. So I think in the main, it's a positive. I wouldn't see it as a negative.
Excellent. And do you think even it's possible to maybe say you volunteered for a party without naming them either?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, really good answer. Another one here as well, which is about, if you have a gap in your CV from taking time off to raise a family, which, maybe previously would have just been, including people going on maternity leave, but maybe nowadays if people have older parents, if you're a student or graduate and you maybe had to take time off to go and look after your parents, how, do you kind of frame that in your CV without saying, you just took time off?
Yeah, I know, and that's such a tricky one, but absolutely. I mean, you have to be honest to a point without getting into the detail, because you're not expected, or are you obliged to include any information pertaining to family or family commitments on your CV. So you will be shortlisted on the basis of your strengths, your skills, your abilities. That said, sometimes people have gaps. So what I would suggest is that you have a section like additional information or something like that. It would be near your skills, and you could include things like volunteering in that, and a little point, a bullet point, had to take 3 years, 5 years, 8 years out of the workforce due to family commitments, but you're not saying what they were. So you're holding on the information yourself, but you're acknowledging it head on that yes, there's a gap. I'm telling you there's a gap. This is why, but you don't need to know anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as always, better to be honest with it rather than, maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Completely. And the reality is that there are more today in this environment, there's more and more strains and stresses, and that's life, and it's a positive, but we don't want it to be viewed as a negative. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Another question here on, specifically on references. So this person says, is it okay to say that references are available upon request, or should you include the full references in your CV?
Yeah, don't include the full references first of all. And yes, it's absolutely fine to use that line, references available on request. If anything, that's my personal preference, simply from a student's point of view. If you commit to 2 names, or you have them on your CV and you're firing your CV off left, right and center, those 2 people could be exhausted writing references for some reason, right? If you hold on the line references available on request, then it's perfectly acceptable to, when you complete an interview and get the job offer, then you can go back to your 2 referees and say, actually, somebody is about to give you a ring, and you can almost coach them and advise them and say, here's the job I applied for. These are the skills they're looking for. Can you now supply a reference based on that? So it's you're targeting and you're helping your referees, and it gives you that little bit more control over how you can be involved in that process. Don't include additional written references at this point or attached to a CV, because it's meaningless at a level, because an employer will want to know exactly certain traits and attributes.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. It's the same as, you know, all the rest of your CV, as you're talking about, you know, cater it specifically to the job that you're applying for, or the graduate program, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Another one here that's on leaving cert points, actually, which I think is a good question, which is, you know, do you have to include your leaving cert points in CV even if it was a few years ago? So I suppose the way to frame it is there a point that comes where you should take that off your CV?
Well, if you're lucky enough to have 600 plus points, I'd never take that off. So I'd always keep that one in there. But yeah, so there are some of the bigger accounting bodies still will look. You could be on a first class honours and they will still look and see that there's a requirement that you have to have 400 plus points. So depending on what employers are looking for, you may need to still include that criteria. But if you're going for a role where your leaving cert points are not sought or looked for, or there's no particular level, I would say leave them off for sure, particularly if you have more solid grades showing on through your course, because we all know that the leaving cert, you know, there's a lot of rote learning there, but there may not be a lot of real learning. Whereas once you get into college, hopefully you're studying something that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, the marks are really genuine marks. So in summary, if you have 600 plus points, leave them on. If you have an average of 300, 350, and look, it's fine, it's a respectable result, but you're on track for a 2-1, then focus on where you're at now and omit the detail in terms of the points on the leaving cert.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And, you know, I think it won't be a few years time until we see the outcome in terms of, you know, predicted grades on leaving certs and putting that on CVs. And
yeah,
you know,
that'll be the next thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
One here, I think, which is another interesting one as well, just a couple just to finish with, which is on specific modules and results in college. So should you include all the modules you're studying and links to your results, or just the most relevant ones?
Yeah, okay. So it depends again, and this is a real Irish answer. It depends very much on what you're studying. So if, for example, you're an accounting student, the actual detail of grades in modules is very relevant to exemptions and all of that. So the more detail you give, the more relevant. If it's a thing that you want to include your grades, or you may have 4 really strong grades out of 6 in a particular semester, I would say include the good stuff and include the positive, and you could just put in modules include and put in the really strong ones and leave out the 2 that are a bit dodgier, or just maybe you just genuinely don't like them. So this is where you're back to marketing yourself and putting the best of you on that 2 pages. Because, you know, there is no absolute rule with a CV. There's no rule that says you absolutely have to include every module. So it's very much contingent on what employers are looking for. So, you know, there's no way you can include all modules anyway from 1st to 4th year. That would be just boring. You're not going to stand out. So think back to the theme of the conversation we've just had. Include the best, include the highlights, tailor it for you. What are the modules you loved? Include those, because you will naturally light up in an interview and talk about ones you're enthusiastic about. If the board the pants off you, you're going to be deflated, and your body language will come over like that in an interview. So think in terms of what's the message you want to convey, and you have ownership of that. It's tedious as well putting in grades for every module. So put in the GPA, put in expected result. Here we are now in mid-March. So what's your expected result for final year students in May? You know, you'd have a pretty good idea. What have you got so far in the winter semester? You know, so include the summaries, include the highlights, not the grade by grade details too much.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had a talk earlier about highlighted that, you know, employers only spend, you know, up to 20 seconds maybe looking at a CV. So even if you do get good grades on your modules, the likelihood of, you know, an employer going through every single one is maybe
Yeah.
unlikely anyway. So, you know, highlight the most relevant ones to the job or graduate program you're applying for.
Absolutely.
And just the last one to finish on here, Marie, is about, you know, cover letters. So someone's saying, you know, do you have to write a cover letter every single time? Do you have to cater it for each individual job? I think the answer is yes, although it is time consuming.
Yeah, you're spot on there. The answer is yes and yes. So yes, you write a cover letter for each particular job, and yes, you tailor it to that job, because let's just bear in mind, you know, you have your 2-page CV, but the cover letter sits on top of that. So the cover letter is actually the first point of contact between you and the potential employer. So that you have to get the cover letter right for them to give you the 20 seconds to read the CV. So the cover letter is essentially the highlight. So do you remember I spoke about the profile? The cover letter is that slightly bit fleshed out. That's the simplest way of saying that. So it has to say enough to entice, to hook the employer in, and be long enough to get you shortlisted for interview. That's the sole purpose of the CV and cover letter. So you have to prove in those 6 or 8 or 10 lines that you can do the job, that you're a good fit, and that you have the right skills. Back to the marketing, how you market yourself.
Yeah, that's perfect. And, you know, really kind of positive and firm note to finish on, Marie. So thank you so much for your time and, you know,
Not
for
at
the
all,
presentation.
pleasure, Piers. Yeah.
Really, really